Arkansas, one of the interesting teams to watch in 2024. Expectations for their big matchup with LSU this weekend. Locked on SEC starts now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC, a crossover edition here, talking with our buddy John Nabors, host of Locked On Razorbacks, does a great job covering all things Arkansas. And hey, today's show is presented to you by friends over at the Game Time app. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use our code LOCKEDONCollege, get $20 off your first purchase. And thank you guys for making us your first listen every day. Remember, you could subscribe and check us out on YouTube. We are covering your team every day. John Nabors join us to talk a little bit about the Hogs there in Arkansas, as maybe a little bit more optimism around the Razorbacks in recent weeks. John, welcome in, man. How's your football season been going so far?
Man, I love football. I love Razorback fans because you're talking about the week before the Tennessee win, Arkansas fans were talking about who's going to replace Sam Pittman, who's the next coach going to be, and then the next week it's like, Arkansas could make it into the college football playoff. So it's just amazing. The turnaround, but I love it. It's been a lot of fun to actually feel the fans' excitement about football once again, and it's not like preseason stuff. You're middle of the season and having that excitement, so it's been great.
Yeah, it's really interesting because you even joked with us a couple of weeks ago, like Arkansas is a basketball school. I don't know football, and let's talk a little bit about first off the Bobby Petrino hire. I think it's been great to see Petrino back. The combination with him and Taylen Green, I interviewed Taylen Green here on our show this offseason and was excited to see what he could do coming over from Boise State. But until he got out there, you didn't know, right? Like, you didn't know if that level of football was going to transfer to the SEC. And I think, despite a couple turnovers here and there, I think overwhelmingly Taylen Green's been pretty good and is kind of maybe stabilized a little bit with the balance with the play calling from Petrino and all. What do you make of Taylen Green so far? Here we are sitting at 4-2, 6 weeks or 6 games into the season for Arkansas.
Yeah, Taylen Green, I've been hoping for more, and it's not that he's been bad. He's basically been the player that he was at Boise State when you think about the statistics. He has been just a little bit above 50% completion percentage. He hasn't thrown a whole lot of touchdown passes, but has thrown maybe a few too many picks. And he's done a really good job at times with his legs. But, it's not that he's been bad, but he hasn't been overly impressive. But the thing is against Tennessee, that may have been, honestly, his best performance that he had of the year because he did complete 70% of his passes. Had no touchdowns, no picks, but threw for about 266 yards and completed 70%. And against a really good Tennessee defense. And you really felt like you were getting some going, but then he gets hurt on that play where they got a roughing the passer, and he came out, and Arkansas was still able to get the victory. But the bye week couldn't have come at a better time for the Razorbacks, for Taylen Green. I believe he'll start. I believe he'll play. Sam Pittman's kind of playing the coach and gamesmanship game of, how healthy is he? But I think he's going to be good to go, and I think that he's done a good enough job for the Razorbacks so far this year.
Yeah, and look, Malachi Singleton, is he ready to start a whole game? We'll see if it does come to that this week. But, he led him on the scoring go-ahead drive against Tennessee 2 weeks ago. And I really wanted to have you on last week, but the fact y'all had the bye week, it's still relevant to talk about. John, that day I was just getting vibes, right? Like Alabama loses at Vanderbilt, and I have my sports betting website I use, and I just kept getting vibes throughout the day that they're going to do this. It's a night game in Fayetteville. They haven't had a ton of these in big matchup games in recent years. Feels like we're always the 2:30 game or stupid 11 a.m. game. Night game in Fayetteville just felt like the fans are going to have all day to count down to this, and something good is going to happen. And sure enough, they pull off the 19-14 upset of then ranked number 4 Tennessee. But what was the vibe that day in Fayetteville? Was it feeling like this is going to happen?
There were always going to be fans that felt like they could win. But I'd say the majority of the vibes there on that day was more of like, hey, let's just keep it close. Let's keep it interesting. Let's get into the fourth quarter and let's hope that they do something with it to at least keep us interested and keep us in the game there at Donald W. Reynolds Razorback Stadium. Because I don't think anyone felt like it was going to be blowout city. There may have been some, because that's kind of been Arkansas's MO under Sam Pittman in a lot of cases, that even in the games they lose, they barely lose, which doesn't matter because you still lose. But a lot of fans felt like this was the same way. And I put a lot of money on Arkansas plus 14.5 because I'm like, I just don't think that's going to be the case. And to see what Arkansas did, and to be honest, Gordy, Arkansas should have blown out Tennessee. They should have. They had those opportunities in the first half, where it was 3-0 at halftime. But Arkansas had 4 trips into Tennessee territory, offensive trips into Tennessee territory, and only led to 3 points. And that's the biggest problem with this team. They don't convert in the red zone very well offensively. They haven't been able to convert in those 4th and short situations, and that cost them. And that's going to cost them later if they don't fix that. But Arkansas was the better football team, far and away. And it shouldn't even been as close as it was. Arkansas should have been up at least 17-0 at halftime. And I think that a lot of it's credit to, Arkansas's resiliency in this game. And, of course, you mentioned Malachi Singleton coming in to do a good job. But I think it's all about Travis Williams and that defense. That defense has been phenomenal this year. They've only averaged, I believe, in SEC games alone, 15.5 points per game. They don't have a bunch of pros. I mean, Landon Jackson's really good, but they just got a good group of defensive guys that play really well together. And I think that this has been something that Razorback fans have been really pleasantly surprised by, is seeing how good the defense truly is.
Yeah, and that's what was so incredible was, they won it with that defense. And, Nico's a freshman. He's got to know, you got to at least get rid of the ball there. I think watching that last play over and over again, John, I think he thought he had a running lane to the right. And I think he was in his mind going back and forth. If I run it, this is the last play. If I throw it, it's the last play. And I think by the time his brain reacted, he was kind of near the boundary, we're going out of bounds, and that was kind of it. But that was what I thought he thought. But dude, if he takes off and runs there, I mean, I don't know, Arkansas is going to stop him anyway. So it was just, look, it was fortuitous how it worked out. But it was good to see with all the issues Arkansas's defense has had maybe the last couple seasons. It was good to see a good Arkansas defensive performance.
Well, and on top of that too, I can speak for Razorback fans on this because I was at the game. I was sitting in a suite, flex, but I was over there with a bunch of Razorback fans and even some former players and everything. Shout out to former Razorback Peyton Hillis. Watched the game with him, but up until that point, everyone felt like Arkansas was going to lose because that's how it has happened. I mean, people talk about how their team is snake bitten or cursed or whatever. Arkansas has had a knack for having a lead and blowing it. They did it against Oklahoma State this year. They did it against Texas A&M this year, and it felt like it was going to be the same thing with Tennessee. And I did not believe Arkansas had won the game until he ran out of bounds. I look up at the clock, I see 0 seconds, and I see the floodgates open up with the fans rushing the field. And I still, to a little bit, I'm like, man, they're going to put 1 second back on this clock. Like it didn't go up, but that's not what happened. No one believed it. No one believed it until it was finally over. And the emotion that Razorback fans had, like that was incredible, Gordy. I know we're talking football, but last year for Razorback sports was the worst year of all time. Like you had a 4-8 football team, you had a basketball team that everything went off the rails. You didn't make any postseason. You had a losing record, and then you had a baseball team that was really good regular season, got bounced out, went 1-2 in your own regional. It was the roughest year that Razorback fans had where they didn't have any sort of redeeming quality of a sport. And to see the emotions that Razorback fans let out that day, to finally just win one, finally, that was a special thing. They know the job's not done, and they still got a lot of work to do, but it was something that just the state of Arkansas probably needed more so than anybody.
Yeah, 2 other guys I do want to gush on. Andrew Armstrong has really emerged as a go-to target. As it sits right now, he's number 3 in the conference in total receiving yards. Of course, Trey Harris from Ole Miss leads the way, but Ryan Williams, the 17-year-old freshman from Alabama, he's in there number 2, but Andrew Armstrong just behind him, and so a chance for him to perhaps jump ahead of him. But the other one that, probably my favorite player, if I'm ranking my top 5 favorite players in the SEC this year, I was talking up Jaquindon Jackson back in the spring. I mean, I just really liked what I saw from the kid and thought he was going to be special and was leading the SEC in rushing, but having the bye week this past week, they, gets jumped by a couple of guys, but still sitting at 4th overall. And I think it's going to be a fun race down the stretch with Dylan Sampson, Henry Parrish, Le'Veon Moss, Jaquindon Jackson, and Jarquez Hunter. That's as good as it gets in the SEC in terms of rushing, but man, they nothing against Rockin'. It's good to see Rocket Sanders doing some good things in South Carolina, but he couldn't stay healthy. Jaquindon Jackson, man, is just a special runner. He
is, and it's been a little bit alarming because there's times where he's been banged up a little bit. I know he got banged up a little bit against Tennessee. In fact, I was making a joke with some of my buddies here that it seems like every single game he's gone down and somebody, the trainers or whatever had to go out and check him out. which it's not to say, oh, well, he's soft or anything. It's just because that's how he plays. He plays so hard and physical that it wears down on him. I mean, you're in the SEC. And so that's a concern that as great as he is, as he's fast, he's got speed, he's got physicality, he's got great vision, but he loves contact. And it's great, but, you want to make sure that he's got the longevity for the season. So I think some teams like Texas A&M did a really good job against Arkansas, and I think Texas A&M is actually a lot better than what people originally thought. Like that loss, I thought at the time was kind of bad, but it doesn't seem that way anymore. LSU or Tennessee did some good things too, but overall, I feel like Jaquindon Jackson has been, without question, the best offensive player on this team, and he's just got so much to him. You got to keep him healthy, and the offensive line's got to continue to open some holes for him because, let's be honest, every team that plays Arkansas, especially LSU this weekend, they're going to try to focus in on stopping the run and making Taylon Green throw. And if they do a good job of that, Taylon Green's got to kind of offset it a little bit with his passes. But I've been just really impressed by him and his ability to, make plays when there doesn't seem to be a play to make. He's a really great player.
One more thing on the run game. Does it feel like, at least for me, and you tell me I'm an outsider looking in, it feels like the freshman Braylon Russell may have jumped Rashad Dubinion on the depth chart as the number 2 guy. Is that right?
I would say so. Just because, listen, he is a true freshman. He's from Arkansas. He was a highly recruited player coming out of high school, and everybody had big, thoughts and moments for him. But here's the thing that I think people may sometimes forget. So you mentioned Bobby Petrino being the offensive coordinator. Bobby Petrino loves himself a big running back. You think back when he was here at Arkansas, you had Nile Davis, who was like 5'10". He wasn't that tall, but he was like 230 pounds. You think back to a Ronnie Wingo, a Broderick Green, even throw in a player like a Dennis Johnson, who was 5'9", but he weighed 220 pounds. I mean, he just likes having big physical running backs as part of his offense. And it's not to say he can't have other types of running backs, but I think because of how big Braylon Russell is, I mean, dude's a truck. I mean, he's in there at 6'1", 255 pounds, and he's got some good speed on him. So I think he's continuing to be a part of the offense, and I definitely think right now at least he's the second option at running back, and he's earned it because he's done really well as a true freshman.
Arkansas has pleasantly surprised some folks so far throughout the season. Can they do it this week against LSU at home? We're going to get into that game here in just a second with John Nabors, Locked On Razorbacks. More with John Nabors in just a second, but I want to remind you guys today's episode is brought to you by friends over at Game Time. If you've not checked out the Game Time app, you need to go download it and check them out today. They got a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. And the Game Time Picks is going to filter out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And the best part of the Game Time app is it's not just sporting events. They got plenty of sports on there, but their curation process is going to make it easier for you to save more on sporting events, concerts, comedy, theater, whatever it is. My favorite feature they have is the all-in pricing. You can toggle that feature on to show your total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. Of course, the seat views, you get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy, so you know exactly what the view is going to look like from where you're sitting. So go check them out today. It's the Game Time app. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use our code LOCKEDONCollege, get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem our code LOCKEDONCollege. Get $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. All right, continue our conversation with John Nabors, host of Locked On Razorbacks, and doing a little crossover edition here with John. And John wanted to get into previewing this game between LSU and Arkansas. It is the Golden Boot Trophy, right? Look, the LSU won the Magnolia Bowl this past weekend. People still don't even know that that's a thing or a trophy. At least the Golden Boot, it's fun to pick up. It weighs like 150 pounds, the trophy. So there's a little something on the line here, but I love this rivalry because it dates back to 1901. It's one of the historic kind of SEC. I say SEC, even though Arkansas wasn't in the SEC for a long time, but it feels like this is just one of those games where weird stuff kind of happens sometimes. And yeah, LSU has kind of dominated the rivalry in recent years. I want to say has won 7 of the last 8, but even still, just 3 years ago, Arkansas won in Baton Rouge, and I was thumbing through it. John, do you know LSU's only lost one home game under Brian Kelly, and that was to Tennessee. And I was like, well, when's the last time before that they lost in Death Valley? And it was that Arkansas game back 3 years ago. in Ogeron's last year. So anyway, all that to say, this rivalry is close sometimes. I mean, even the Joe Burrow year, well, that was the blowout year, but there was one of those years where it still felt like this thing is always like a 3-point game and always kind of weird. But what's the early vibe there in Arkansas? How are fans feeling about this one?
Well, it's funny because, you talk about 3 points. That's exactly what this game has been for 4 straight years. Sam Pittman's been the head coach at Arkansas. The margin of victory for either team in this game has been 3 points. Wow. Arkansas lost at home, I believe it was 24-21 in 2020. And then in 2021, Arkansas ended up winning that game, as you mentioned, down there in Death Valley. I think it was 16-13 in overtime. And then you had the game down in Fayetteville the year after that, 13-10, real barn burner. And then you had the game last year, of course, that was in Death Valley. That was a 3-point game that LSU hit the game-winning field goal at the end of the game. So, yeah, there's something to that. Arkansas fans, they care about it. They care about this rivalry, if you want to call it that. I give T-Bob Hebert a lot of grief because he's his favorite trophy. It's his favorite game. He said it many times. So I'm like, well, at least one person says that. But, yeah, there's the vibe here in Fayetteville for that game, though. Arkansas is expecting to win. I'm not saying they're going to win, but that's the confidence level that Razorback fans have right now because of you got a bye week. You're coming off a bye week. You're getting guys healthy. You have a lot of momentum coming off of that Tennessee victory and a lot of energy. You got a defense that has been really good this year for Arkansas and everything. And also, LSU is a good team, but I think that just seeing the game against Ole Miss and whatnot, there's some flaws there. And so I just think that the Arkansas really believes, and it also being a night game too, again, here in Fayetteville, Arkansas fans believe that this is a game they're going to win. And that's a good confidence level to have. I think LSU is going to be the best team Arkansas's faced this year, offensively especially. And I think Nussmeier's done some really good things. He had not a bad game. He had a not-so-great game this past weekend. But LSU's going to give them all they got. And Arkansas is good too because both teams really want this game. It's going to mean a lot for their respective seasons. Because LSU, the last thing they want to do is lose a game to Arkansas because they still got some pretty tough games ahead of the schedule, and same thing with Arkansas. So I think Arkansas, again, they feel good. They like their chances. But as you mentioned, this game's always weird and always crazy. I think no matter what, though, it's going to be a close game at the end.
Yeah, I think one of the things that kind of jumps out to me, and I said this last week against Ole Miss, was that, LSU's done a really good job of protecting Garrett Nussmeier. I mean, they give up 0 sacks to Ole Miss last week. Ole Miss came into last week leading the country in sacks with 24, and they just couldn't bring Nussmeier down. And that's where I look at a guy like Landon Jackson, who's been disruptive, but only the 2.5 sacks on the year. I just thought he was going to have one of those big monster years this year. And he's had a good year. I just thought, it was going to be a little bit, the sack totals would be mounting for him. So we'll see, but that to me is where I kind of start. Okay, we know the Arkansas or the LSU offensive line is really good in pass protection, not so great in run blocking. LSU's not been able to run the football, but it's almost like when Garrett Nussmeier's throwing the football around like he is, it doesn't matter if they have a run game. So I think a couple things here for Arkansas, keys to a victory. Like if they can get a turnover from Nussmeier, which he's been prone to throw an interception or two, that's a huge advantage for Arkansas. Danico Slaughter, those guys. Number 2, if they can get pressure, if they can get a sack or 2, that would go a long way. And then 3, stifle LSU's run game like many people have been doing so far this year. If they do those 3 things, I think they're going to have a great shot at victory.
Yeah, that's why I think this game is going to be low scoring no matter what. But you mentioned the thing with Landon Jackson. Landon Jackson, it's been frustrating for him not playing so well, but it was in the beginning of the year, and just over the past 2 games is when he's really started catching his stride. So that's really good for the sake for Arkansas. But, to me, Arkansas, I don't know if they're going to get pressure on Nussmeier, but I do know that they're going to have some different things mixed up for him. And I think that the secondary has done a good enough job. But the big key in this, Jalen Braxton, who is Arkansas's best defensive back, we all felt like last week it was going to be a good chance he would return for this game. And according to Sam Pittman on his Monday press conference, it looks like he's going to be out. So that's a big deal for Arkansas not having their best secondary player in there. So there's going to be issues with that. Like I said, I think Arkansas is going to do a good job against the run. They have pretty much all year. I think Travis Williams, again, has done a great job. But you get 2 weeks to prepare. That's going to be extremely helpful there too. But to me, if you mentioned turnovers, it's easy for every team to say this, but it's true. Arkansas, the reason they've lost 2 games this year for numerous reasons, but the number one is turnovers. Against Oklahoma State, they don't have that pick 6 there in the first half that was crucial. Arkansas beats Oklahoma State. I believe that if Arkansas does not have that turnover on their own 5-yard line, that fumble on the handoff against Texas A&M, I think Arkansas beats Texas A&M because A&M punched it in and they ended up losing by 4 points. It's woulda, coulda, shoulda stuff. Doesn't matter. But Tennessee and Arkansas, neither team turned the ball over there, and Arkansas won. So stop traffic, but Arkansas is actually a pretty decent team when they don't turn the ball over. To me, turnover battle is going to be huge. And if Arkansas can get turnovers from LSU, it's about capitalizing on them. But Arkansas's got to protect the ball too, and they at times this year have not done a very good job with that.
Yeah, it's crazy, John. My narrative I've been making on Vandy is Vanderbilt is realistically 2 plays away from being undefeated right now. The late score they gave up against Georgia State, and then in overtime with Mizzou, they took a shot at the end zone and got called for offensive pass interference. But they're 2 plays away. You can make the case for Arkansas as well. The double overtime with Oklahoma State, and of course the A&M game where it just felt like, man, you're like 1 play away. You were 1 play away from like something good happening and getting out there with the win. So, look, that would be a monster win for Arkansas going this week. The other thing I look at, John, is the mobility of Taylon Green. And you look at LSU's schedule so far. We just saw Jackson Dart. There were a lot of design runs for him in that second half against LSU where he was able to keep the chains moving with his legs. He had a 17-yard run in that one. But you look at the other ones. Lenore Sellers for South Carolina had some effective runs running. So this one is, to me, it's going to be the counterbalance between choosing when to tuck it and run and when to keep your eyes down the field and throw for Taylon Green. But if he can avoid the costly turnover, like you said, which he's done a couple times this year, if he can avoid that, I think they're going to be in a good spot.
No, I think so too. And, mentioning about Taylon Green, that has probably been my biggest knock on him so far this year, is it's not every time. But, for instance, when Arkansas is running a little RPO, there's been so many times where if he just makes the right decision as far as either handing it to Jaquindon Jackson or keeping it, they score. Like, it's a big play, but it seems like so many times he makes the wrong decision in that situation and ends up being a loss. Even last week against Tennessee, people may not remember this, but there was a play where I have never seen a wide receiver more wide open for the easiest touchdown in the world than Isaac Teslaw was in that game. I mean, if Taylon just looks over there, he could have granny shotted it over to him, and he would have ran in for a touchdown. So those are the things that worry me about Taylon is his decision-making in those aspects. He's capable of it. He can definitely do it, but again, LSU's too good of a team to not take advantage of those opportunities that are in front of you where, hey, if you hand it here, Jaquindon Jackson goes for 60 yards and a touchdown, but you got to be able to make those right decisions in those situations, and they're still working with Taylon on it, but his mobility is really dangerous, but it's his decision-making that may hinder his mobility if he doesn't make the right call.
All right, one more segment with John Nabors here, doing a little crossover, Locked On Razorbacks, Locked On SEC. We're going to talk some big picture SEC stuff here in just a sec. Back to John Nabors in just a second, but I want to remind you guys today's episode presented to you by our friends over at FanDuel. And look, whether you're a college fan, NFL fan, you could start your season off with a big return over at FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. When you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets, and that's at FanDuel. And you will get started today with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's over at FanDuel.com. Of course, you can download the app, check them out, check out all the great lines they got going on this weekend across the SEC. You like Arkansas +3 at home underdog to LSU. They got that there for you. If you like Mizzou, -5.5 at home against Auburn, you can catch them. Of course, Oklahoma, a 3-point home favorite against South Carolina. A lot of close lines this week, man. Alabama, a 2.5-point road favorite at Tennessee. Last time Bama went there, they lost, so you can catch maybe Tennessee on the money line. Texas, a 3.5-point home favorite against Georgia, and Florida, a 2-point home favorite against Tennessee. I'm telling you, it is. Somebody said to me earlier this week, what is the SEC, the NFL now? Look at these small lines. You can find them all at FanDuel.com. You like the points, you like the betting line on some of these to pull off upsets, you can do so at FanDuel.com. Check them out today. It's FanDuel.com. We continue on here, a crossover edition, Locked On SEC, Locked On Razorbacks, John Nabors, Chris Gordy. And John, I want to get your kind of take on big picture SEC so far. This feels like a year where, and I said this a week ago, I felt like Mississippi State was the worst team in the conference, but the rest of the conference 1 through 15, that anybody could beat anybody on any given day. And I almost kind of have to pull that one back because Mississippi State just put up 31 on Georgia. I didn't think that was possible. Now, they didn't come close to beating Georgia, but still they hung with them. And this Michael Van Buren kid, who's a freshman, like, holy crap, what if they might sneak up and beat somebody? So I just can't remember a year in the SEC, man, where it's this top to bottom, like a level playing field that anybody can beat anybody.
Yeah, I've never seen anything like it. It's like, I don't know who's good, because even Texas, for instance, which I believe, hey, number one team in the country, they deserve to be number one, not arguing that at all. But I mean, have they really played a good team? Like a good team. Michigan's not a good team. They beat Mississippi State. Mississippi State kind of did a couple things to them a little bit. They played Oklahoma. Oklahoma can't score. Like that's a terrible offense. So I'm not saying Texas is not number one. I'm not saying they're not the best team, but I don't think they've been tested, and we'll find out a little bit this week just what it's all about. But you mentioned Georgia. They don't look like a Kirby Smart Georgia team. It doesn't look like the one that I was expecting. I mean, Alabama, if Kalen DeBoer would have lost that game to South Carolina, they literally would have like run him out on a rail. I'm not even kidding. Like they would have fired him, it felt like. So you just have craziness. And as an Arkansas guy and as Arkansas fans, that's what you love because those are the years it's your best chance. It's your best chance to sneak up and beat teams that aren't expecting to win. Arkansas has got a really tough schedule in front of them. They still got to play LSU, obviously. They got Ole Miss. They got Texas. But guess what? Those 3 games right there are in Fayetteville, all 3 of them.
Yeah.
And their road games are against Mississippi State, which, again, good team, but I think it's safe to say that they're one of the worst teams in the SEC. And then at the end of the season, Missouri, which, man, did they get exposed the other week against Texas A&M. So I'm not saying Arkansas is going to go undefeated. I'm not. But would you be surprised? I mean, how shocked would everybody be if Arkansas snuck up and beat a Texas? I think it would be an upset, but I don't think anyone would be like, oh my goodness, you're talking about the one of the worst teams beating one of the best teams. It's not that way. I love this chaos, and people have their own theories and all that. This is giving me vibes of that 2007 season too, where you're halfway point of the season and you're like, I don't know what this is. And then when you add in the 12-team playoff, there's chance for all types of chaos. So I love the way that the SEC is. I think it makes it a lot more fun and entertaining, and it gives a lot of parity. But at the same time, chaos for a conference that's had so much of like, well, Bama, Georgia. I don't know how fans are going to handle chaos from some of these other bigger schools, but I love it. Give me all of it. It's just nice for Arkansas to be in the mix for a change and actually be a part of that chaos in a good way.
Well, that's what some people forget. Like prior to this last 3-4 year dominance from Kirby at Georgia and really interwoven in the Saban dominant years at Bama, like that's what the SEC was in the 2000s, was every year somebody stepped up and was the premier team. And like everybody kind of took turns, like, 03 LSU wins it all. Then Florida and Urban Meyer win 2. And then, Cam Newton and Auburn win one. It was kind of everybody was taking their turn. And then it became Bama, 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 Bama. And it was like, okay, well, this isn't fun anymore. There's one team dominating the conference. But like, I'd love to see the conference get, but I'd love to see, look, if Texas number one, if Texas goes on and win a championship, hey, great. Then next year, somebody else does. And then, I think that's great for the conference. I think that's great for fans. It got old, the damn Bama Saban dominance. I'm loving seeing Kalen DeBoer smiling after a 2-point win over South Carolina. This is where Bama's come back down to the level playing field. And of all years for Arkansas not to play Bama, John, you wish you had him this year.
Yeah, isn't that funny how it turns out every single time? It seems like for Arkansas. But, I've said this, and I know you've talked about it, Gordy, but, we'll take the example of Vanderbilt beating Alabama. I mean, I don't think anybody, even in the worst ideas, would have ever said, oh, yeah, the first loss that Alabama's going to suffer this year is going to be against the Vanderbilt Commodores. Like, nobody would have guessed that. But this is what makes it so special and so incredible. There is no other sport, man. There is no other sport where an upset like that happens. The home crowd tears down a piece of the equipment and facility of that place, marches it miles through the downtown area with police escorts around them, and then is allowed just to toss it into the river. There's no sport that does that. No baseball, no basketball, no NFL, no other sport. Not only, it's one thing to do it, but then you got escorts. The cops are like, all right, well, hey, we'll let you go down there and walk it through Broadway. Yeah. Oh, you want to toss it in the river? Okay, well, just be careful. Go. No other sport does that, and that's what makes that so special. It's like, how could you not be excited for Vanderbilt? I mean, other than you're a Bama fan, but how could you not be like, dude, that's awesome. That's awesome. And that's what makes football so great, and that's what makes the season so fun, is because every single game you're going to have to be on your toes. You got to expect the unexpected, but it makes it great for the entertainment value of, hey, if you're Mississippi State, if you're Vanderbilt, or if you're Arkansas, or if you're whoever, you go into a game, you're like, hey, maybe this is our day. Maybe we do pull it off. And that just makes college football what it's about, dude, and how much fun it is. So I love it.
And not only throwing the goalpost in the water, but then pulling it out and cutting it up and then auctioning off those pieces of that goalpost for like $1,100 a piece.
Yeah, dude, Gordy, what's funny, there's no protocol for that.
Right.
It's not like it's written in a handbook back, okay, well, if this happens, then we got to do this and this. That was just on the fly. Like, we'll roll with it. Let's see what happens. And it worked out great. So, again, that's so much fun. And you can't get that anywhere else. You get in the SEC. I know there's other places in college football that give it to you, but if you're not borrowing from Gladiator, you're not entertained by this, then I don't know. You must hate sports and hate fun, because this is a lot of fun right now.
Give me a quick thought. You're there in Birmingham for SEC basketball media days, a very different vibe for Arkansas basketball with John Calipari in there now, getting some big time recruits and all that. What's the vibe with Arkansas basketball?
Well, I mean, they came out as ranked 16th preseason, according to the AP, to finish, I believe, fourth in the SEC, fourth or fifth in there. But I think, people are excited about basketball. It's a huge basketball state. They love their basketball, the talent that comes through here. And I think everyone's excited about it. It is just weird, though, because anytime there's a new coach, they talk about culture changes. It's always like takes a little bit to get understanding and everything. That's kind of where it's at with Cal, where everyone's pumped, but everyone's also like, we don't really know how to handle things. We don't know what this is and what this means, and is this a good thing? Is this not a good thing? Nobody really knows. They're excited about it, and they're excited about the talent there, but it just seems like it's kind of like up in the air of, we enjoy this. We don't know what to do. It's kind of like we don't know what to do with our hands over here. We'll just, hang out and be over here, but I mean, the schedule's incredible. They have some big marquee games. They have some great talent on the team. I think it's going to be a process for them to take a little bit to get it going, because I think that their new team, and it'll take a little bit to gel. They're opening up their exhibition season with Kansas, the number one team, so be a good barometer. But once basketball season hits, and people are going to be excited beyond belief. I don't know how great Cal's going to be. It's kind of a roll the dice and see what happens, but people are talking about Arkansas. People are interested in Arkansas, and I can't say the same for their friends over that Big Blue Nation, because it doesn't seem like they have the same zest and luster like they once did.
Oh, it's going to be so fun when they play each other. The trash talk just between Kentucky and Arkansas fans all season is going to be a lot of fun. But yeah, for those who missed it, Alabama opening as the number 2 team in the rankings. Auburn coming in at 11, Tennessee 12, A&M 13. Arkansas 16, Texas, the new addition, we forget they're in there now, at 19, Florida at 21, and Kentucky 23 with Chris Beard and Ole Miss at 24. I mean, absolutely freaking loaded the SEC is once again. And then, we'll see some of the other programs, like I know LSU's brought in some good recruits. They might be better. It's just going to be, see what Oklahoma is. It's just going to be a total bleep show. Maybe it's like the football season. Maybe just everybody's going to beat up on everybody, and it'll just be like a 500 conference, but it's going to be a lot of fun. You'll have full coverage there. People could check out your show throughout the week.
That's right. Locked On Razorbacks, man. We're going to talk about that. Of course, we'll get you ready for the LSU game and giving you some more details on that and what we think about what's going on. Who knows? Maybe I'll do a crossover with Moscona. We'll see if he can handle that. But we're locked on LSU. But yeah, it's going to be great. This is the time of year with the overlap of both sports and the excitement here in Arkansas. The weather's finally getting nicer. It's changing. So yeah, man, I'm pumped up. I'm excited and can't wait for basketball season, but really can't wait for this weekend because it should be a great day in Fayetteville.
Real quick on the way out, your prediction, you got the Hogs?
I'm sure I'll stick with this prediction and I won't change it at all. But, I actually do. I do have the Razorbacks winning, and I think they're going to win by a final score of 23-20 because that's the thing. 4 straight years of the 3-point margin of victory. I don't think this one ends up being any different, but I think Arkansas comes out on the winning end. And if you think Razorback fans are obnoxious now, It's gonna get nasty next week, and you may just have to go on Twitter and mute the word Arkansas and Hogs and all that, because fans are going to be coming out of the woodwork towards everybody. Arkansas versus the world. They don't care about anything else. But I think that they win. I think it's a great game, but I think that they win.
All right, he is John Nabors, host of Locked On Razorbacks. I'm Chris Gordy, host of Locked On SEC. Thank you guys for making us your first listen. If you haven't made your second listen, you can check out the other show. If you watch John with Locked On Razorbacks, check out Locked On SEC. If you watch or listen to Locked On SEC, check out John with Locked On Razorbacks and make it a dual thing there. All right, we'll talk to you guys tomorrow. It's the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day.